I think what people also do that keeps them stuck is they turn very quickly now to AI. And the number of the exact same outlines that I am seeing right now in my inbox is nuts. It's like same structure, same boring writing, same vanilla, like it's keeping people stuck. They think that it's a helpful tool, but it's actually disconnecting them from themselves.
Welcome to She Coaches Coaches, the podcast where we have thoughtful, honest conversations about what it really takes to build a thriving coaching business. I'm your host, Candy Motzek, and before building my business, I spent years as a senior corporate leader. Now, today, I work with coaches who are smart, well-trained, and deeply capable, and who want clarity about how to grow in a way that feels aligned and financially sustainable. On this show, I sit down with successful coaches to explore the real decisions behind their success, how they got started, what shifted as they grew, and the mindset and business choices that helped them gain momentum without burning out. Whether you're early in your coaching journey or refining a business you've already built, She Coaches Coaches is here to offer perspective, confidence, and grounded insight to support your next chapter. To learn more about how I work with people, go to my website, stepintosuccessnow.com. And now let's dive in. Hey, friends, and welcome to this episode of She Coaches Coaches. I am so glad you're here, and I am happy to welcome a new guest to the platform. Let me tell you about her. Stacy Ennis is a best-selling author, book coach, and speaker on a mission to help leaders clarify their ideas and harness their unique story to make an impact. Her background includes impacting more than 100 books in her 16 plus years in publishing, ghostwriting for a Nobel Prize winner in medicine, and leading as executive editor of Sam's Club, Healthy Living Made Simple, a publication that reached about 11 million readers. Stacy's work and writing have been featured in Yahoo, Inc., Insider, Katie Couric, and the TEDx stage. She's also the host of the podcast Beyond Better and holds a master's in writing and editing from the University of Cincinnati. Stacy, welcome to the show. I am so glad you're here.
Me too, Candy. I cannot wait for this conversation.
What is exciting in your world right now? What are you really fired up about in your business?
I think, this may not sound like an expected answer probably for a business owner to say, but I'm really appreciating spaciousness in my business right now. I'm a very intense entrepreneur. I'm always, striving and working and setting goals. And I'm also in a stage where I can do that. And I can also take a lot of time off. And I can also have a beautiful morning and go on a run, which I did this morning by the ocean, and have a nice breakfast. And, it just feels like a stage of my life where a lot of the work that I've put in is coming to fruition. And while there is still intensity, and I like the intensity and I appreciate the intensity, there is also ease. And that's a really nice place to be.
I'm hearing this feeling of balance. And I love that word spaciousness that you used, and you really did a great job of describing that. How does having that spaciousness and perhaps balance, how does that impact the quality of the work that you do?
I think it's huge. I mean, growing up in the US, I was raised in a culture that values depletion, not restoration. And I have found that as most humans, I should say all humans, I need space to rest and restore and be my very best. And so in my life, that means, the mornings that I mentioned, but it also means I take off 8 to 10 weeks a year, and I feel absolutely nothing about that. Like, I'm grateful for it. And I think culturally, probably I'm assuming there are Americans listening to this. It's like, we don't do that. It's like 2 to 3 weeks a year. But I show up with such a level of real intensity, and also the work that I do. I often joke to my husband when I'm like walking into a client call, I'm like, well, off to be a hired brain, and so as essentially a hired brain, you have to deeply listen. You have to be on it. You have to be present, not just with your clients on the call, but in the review of their work and the feedback you're giving them when they're not even present. So before I built that in, which was, earlier stage of my life in that kind of hustle mode that many of us go through when we're building our business, that was not a healthy place to be, and it didn't serve me well as a human, and I'm really grateful that I can show up in a different way now.
Yeah. And it's a great role model for the rest of your family and all the people around you as well, right? We need more of this spaciousness and allowing ourselves to restore and regenerate and it's the quality of life. I know that you live in Europe, and do you think that that's because of Europe that you've given yourself that space to do that?
Think it's because of all of the countries that I've lived in, and probably I would credit a lot of my shift, although it took me some time to really learn the message, but I moved to the Dominican Republic when I was 24, and my husband and I moved. We were engaged at the time, and mañana culture. It's like that's basically what it is. Ah, mañana. And I really came up to a kind of culture that was completely opposite of how I functioned. For me, it was like, now. I want it done now. I want it done yesterday. And I had to learn to operate in a very different way of being. And that really like tested me a lot. And I also lived in Asia and now I live in Europe. And I think Portugal in particular, because I live in southern Portugal, there's a real, and I live in Europe's vacation destination. I live in the Algarve. And I think the thing about living in a vacation spot is that business are not open 12 months out of the year. So they shutter for often 2 to 3 plus months out of the year. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And so I started like looking around and going, could I do that? Could I take like a whole month off? And playing with the idea and then testing the idea. I think absolutely Europe has, I mean, I've been here almost 7 years. So of course I've been influenced by it, but I think it's been like a slow simmer until I also, I think it's really easy to be, I'm now 17 years. I need to update my, my bio, 17 years into this work that I'm doing. And sometimes I remember when I was younger, I'd get really annoyed with people that were like, oh, you need to take time for yourself. Oh, don't work so hard. And I also have to like acknowledge that there's a phase of your career where, you need to say yes to a lot of opportunities. I think I could have done that better. But I'm also in a financial spot that's very different than where I was when I had, my first baby. And in a reputation spot that I am in where I have a lot of demand where I wasn't. I was like on Craigslist looking for work in the beginning. So, I think there's a lot to that it's easy also to be where I am and to say that. And then also I think about, the younger me. I remember sitting on the floor one night at 10 p.m. putting little plaques on awards for award ceremony I was emceeing like the next day and like having like not a breakdown, but just like a come to Jesus moment where I was like, what am I doing? Like, this is nuts. I can't do this anymore. So, there's so much, it's layered, isn't it?
There is. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Let me ask you this. So, in supporting writers and, 16, now 17 years in publishing, you talk about writing as a way to uncover your unique story. And we've just started to get a little glimpse of your unique story. But for the coaches and leaders that you help, the ones that are especially feeling stuck in that transition, what is it about the writing process itself that really opens them up? What do you
Mm. I have such a soft spot in my heart for people in transition. And this is really my area of specialty. I work with a lot of people who are corporate in transition to consulting or coaching, or they're consulting, coaching into a transition of thinking differently, growth, expansion. I'm also working with a lot of people in retirement transition recently, which has been a really special place for me to get to learn from somebody who's at that stage of their career. A lot of people go into the goal of writing a book wanting to check something off. It's like they want to have written a book. They don't necessarily want to write a book. But I see the writing process as a journey, and I see it as a transformative journey because I have seen over and over again how profound it can be. Writing a book is one of, if not the most deeply introspective process that you can undergo. It forces you to sit with your own thoughts. It forces you to clarify those thoughts. And then it forces you to put those thoughts in a manner that will be interesting and helpful for other people. And it also, if you're writing a book that's maybe a big idea or more of a prescriptive book that's maybe around your methodology, then It forces you to clarify your work in a way that other people can understand, use, and repeat. And so that whole process is deeply clarifying. And by the nature of it being deeply clarifying, it ends up also being deeply transformative. I find that people not only emerge with clearer language, a lot of times they have new frameworks. So a lot of times we use the word framework like it's something really special, but it's really just like a package you put on a process and the language that you give it. So you go through that process of putting that framework together. Now you have this to use in your business. It becomes a whole new kind of like asset actually that you get to build other things off of. And then there's also this ability now to speak with this depth of confidence about your work. You have just this way of showing up that's maybe renewed or new. And, for those in transition, it is a exploratory journey to really figure out, what is my message? What is my niche? What are the stories that I want to share? Who do I want to impact? So much to it, but I just think it's such a beautiful journey, especially for coaches and consultants.
And those are the people that love that kind of journey too,
Yeah.
right? Like as a coach, there's nothing more interesting than going, so what does that really mean to me? Like, why
Yes.
does that matter? Right. So using the writing, I mean, I do a lot of journaling. You can see some of them behind me, but just that the
Wow.
pen to paper in the journaling is really reflective. And so then to go into a process such as what you've got really makes a difference. I really understand the feeling of writing as self reflection, but then to take it to that next level of having to clarify it for an audience. First you clarify for yourself, then you clarify your language, and to work with a guide such as yourself. I can imagine that it's quite the process. Do you have a story of a client who has really experienced that transformation for themselves that you could share with us?
Mm. Oh man, this is such a hard question because there's so many stories that I can think of. Maybe I will share about Regina Lawless. She just comes to mind because when we started working together, she was the head of DEI at Meta, Instagram, and she was in obviously like lifetime position. This is the kind of thing that anybody in that space, this would be the ultimate, right? To reach a position like that. And did great work in that space and really showed up as a leader in that space and served her teams well. And she knew that she had a bigger mission and message to share. So she wrote her book, Do You? And that book was her transition from her corporate role into the work that she's doing now. She's speaking all over the country. She's just on all these amazing stages. Her and her husband started like I don't know if it's exactly a creative agency, something with music, because he's a musician and producer. She's coaching. And so she was really able to use this book to pull together her story, her journey. A lot of the book is really about her sudden loss of her husband while she's in this major role at this major company and kind of navigating that, and the journey that she went on, that she wanted to be able to help more people. So hers is a really cool story because it really is kind of like night and day in a way. You're like at Meta and now you're in this deeply creative space and really sharing your personal story and message.
That is the perfect story because a question that I wanted to ask you was this. There's a lot of people we work with, similar people, professionals, people who've had, significant success in their life, and now they want something different. So I work with a lot of coaches who are still in their 9 to 5, their corporate role with the title, but they really would love to be a full-time coach. And so I was wondering, how does that work? Like, does writing a book, is it something that they should wait to do before they make the leap? Or is the book, could it be part of that strategy that really facilitates that leap? It sounds from the story that that's 100% yes. I'm curious, what does it look like practically? What does that look
Hmm. Well, another example that comes to mind is a woman named Aravi Vargas, and she's a coach. She's an attorney. She had a role at a company. I can't remember. I don't think she was technically in an attorney role. She was in some kind of leadership role at this law firm, and also had her coaching company as well that she was doing alongside this very important and like demanding role. And she wrote her book, and her book has been a really wonderful way for her to both codify the process that she was using with her coaching clients, but also make that step into full-time coaching. So I think hers is a really nice story because the thing is when you go after a goal like writing a book or whatever it is, whatever the person listening or watching this, whatever their thing is, you are being an active participant in your own future. And this is why I love the work that I do so much, and specifically the people that I get to work with. They are not the people that are like, please pick me, please give me an opportunity. We all were that person probably at some point, but they've had some kind of growth that has enabled them to go, I want this. I do that. I do that. I get that. Like they do the work, they show up and they take action. And I think what's really important for anybody that's like, oh, I really need to write that book now, just to make sure that that book is well positioned. So a lot of times I'll work with future authors that they're like, well, I really want to write a personal book, but I also want to write about my area of expertise. And that has to do with my coaching business, for example. And so a lot of times what we will do, one is oftentimes we can find how that personal story can weave in, into the writing of this book. But what we'll often do if they have more than one idea is sequence those. So you are coach here, and maybe you have a 9 to 5 and you have your coaching. Okay. Your vision is you want to be a full-time coach. And not only do you want to be a full-time coach, you want to way out earn what you're making right now and really have a really beautiful, life-giving, financially successful business. And you know that to get there, there are these things that you need to do. Well, this book should be positioned to be a catalyst to help you get to this big vision. And so oftentimes if you have a lot of different ideas, what we're asking is, what is the right book for right now that will help you achieve that big vision? And like, be open to the fact, and this might scare some people, but you might write a lot more books. You have a new skill, so you can write more books. So that might seem a little wild to somebody who's never written a book, but as somebody who has written 18 and I'm working on my 19th one, like, life is long and you might find you like it. So that also gives you some freedom to select the book that is going to really unlock that next space for you.
So what I really hear is the value of working with an expert in choosing the topic that is the fulcrum for the next move that you want to make. And I 100% hear you as well about you could write more than one book, so do you find that people get really stuck in choosing the topic because they have this kind of limited view that says, well, I'm only going to write one, so it has to be the perfect one? And do they really get stuck there? And if so, how do you help them move forward?
They do get stuck. Sometimes it's not so much the topic, it's how to approach the topic and the type of book that they want to write to share the message or the expertise or whatever it is. What they do is they distract themselves with things that don't matter in the writing stage. So they get really obsessed with the title. This is something that I find future authors they will just think about this title, play with the title. It's like controllable. So they distract themselves with things like that actually aren't moving the needle. What I do with authors is I take them through a process where we get everything out. We get it all out and we spend time getting it all out. It's on sticky notes. We do a worksheet. We work together verbally, and that usually results in a couple of book ideas. So then what we do is we really work through what is that right book for right now. I think what people also do that keeps them stuck is they turn very quickly now to AI, and the number of the exact same outlines that I am seeing right in my inbox is nuts. It's like same structure, same boring writing, same vanilla, it's keeping people stuck. They think that it's a helpful tool, but it's actually disconnecting them from themselves. When you're in that ideation process and really selecting the right book for right now, you need to be deeply connected to your own intuition. The book is already within you. You don't need to look elsewhere to find it. It's already there. So you start inside. You start with what's already there. It's already in your mind. It's already in your story, and you build. Eventually, you do need to look at the market. You need to understand how this book is positioned and what's already out there, how it works with your business strategy. But in the beginning, if you're stuck, sometimes a conversation with an expert or, somebody who really understands your work can help. But a lot of the time, it is really that people are just trying to move ahead without doing the deep work that they need to do at the beginning.
I see this a lot in the coaching industry, this reliance on AI. And of course, I use AI in my business, like it would be silly not to, but to use it intentionally and to not lose that human side of the business. And I'm really curious how that's going to change. I've seen the courses, oh, get AI to write your book, but then this is my imagination, but in my imagination, if I read a book that is primarily written by AI, it feels kind of like a shell, like a hollow husk. Like AI is incredibly intelligent. That is its job, but it doesn't have that soul, the heart of the individual. Do you think that people will notice that? Or do you think that they're just going to get sort of, I don't know, almost nose blind to this pablum, soulless, intelligent, but no heart kind of writing? I don't know, just
I believe deeply that those of us that continue our art and craft will greatly benefit from that because the people crave art. It's been true for thousands of years. In fact, so much of our culture, our history surrounds art, whether it's painting or literature, music. And this is a deeply human need to connect with art. Writing a book is one of the most deeply human acts that you can undergo. I think like anyone I'm watching and waiting, but interestingly, this has been my like so far my best year of business ever. And I have such abundance of amazing future authors coming in, wanting to connect to their humanity and connect to other humans. I'm hosting my first retreat this year to here in Portugal to bring humans together. I think that, a lot of the narrative is being driven by the tech companies that profit off of our fear. And so I just have chosen to I mean, I'm slowly completing certification through Anthropic. They have a whole free like certification that you can do. It's a really like nice entry point for people that really want to understand how it works. And I also have really clear boundaries around what I will and will not engage in, especially when it comes to generation, outsourcing your thinking, all of these things that people are so quick to do now. And I have to remind anybody who is in this conversation with us, 5 years ago, you never would have thought to use AI in any meaningful way. You can write a book without AI. I promise you a million times. Like, you don't need it. And I think it's so funny how quick, not funny, but like, haha, but like
yeah,
strange how quickly
ironic.
we're reliant on something we didn't even use. And it's like crippling people.
In this, there's a study that I heard of where, they brought in AI into a company and thinking that it's going to make the workload better. But what happened is because people were able to do more quickly, they ended up working longer hours because there's almost this hunger to continue to produce, regardless of whether the quality is really there or how you happen to measure the quality. And so it's almost like if you're a hamster on a wheel, you think that it's better if you could run twice as fast instead of just going, well, why am I even on a wheel? Why am I not on the path in the forest? Right? We sort of forget the why behind it. I'm really curious about how AI is going to change. I've done a similar thing in my coaching practice in that I work very deeply with private clients and also in small communities because I feel we really need this human side of being seen, being heard, having an individual to talk to. I don't think that you can replace that. I know there's lots of great tools out there, but that's my particular take on it.
I agree.
Me, what, you've got a depth of experience, but what do you find that most leaders and coaches, what do they most consistently misunderstand about what it takes to actually write the book and write the book that delivers impact? What's the misunderstandings?
Well, a couple things. One, many of them think that they need to go live in the woods to get a book done. And most of us will not be able to do that. And it's just, that's not the route that you need to take. It's really about discipline and consistency and follow through. A lot of people make the mistake, as I mentioned earlier, of shortchanging the outlining process, the ideation and outlining process. So in the process that I take authors through, we spend up to 2 months outlining. and we end up with a 15 to 30 page book outline, which I think when I first tell, a new author that we're going to do this, I see their like their eyes go a little
Right.
big and
My
they
eyes
compose
even did
themselves.
it just now, actually.
And pretty much always, about halfway through the book, they will go, "Oh my gosh, Stacy, I didn't know about this outline when we started. I'm so glad I have it right now." Because, when you get halfway through, or maybe less than, you've got 20,000 words and you still have like 30,000 to write. It's getting real. You're like, "Oh man, I haven't even written half the book yet." Then you have a map. So you have this amazing map that you've thought deeply through. It's not a perfect map. So sometimes you do have to take a left turn instead of a right. You need to, you know, reroute. There's always going to be things you can't discover about a book until you write it. But that process of the ideation and the outlining and really putting in the work there and giving it honoring that space for the book is really, really important, and something that it's not just business leaders, not just coaches, it's pretty much all authors. They just want to sit down and type like in Love Actually. You just go to the cabin by the lake and type it away, and beautiful novel comes out, or nonfiction book.
So we've talked about everything sort of planning the book, outlining, right, the writing, the things that happen. But what about after? Once the book is published, do you find that the authors are a little bit stuck about, well, now what do I do with it? I've got this, this thing, it's ready to go. How do you support the authors in promoting and marketing?
So my expertise is in writing. So this is where I really try to stay in my space as an educator and coach. And I saw it's been about a year and a half ago now. Actually, I saw it well before this, but it took me a little bit of time to create this kind of next step for authors. But I saw this need, to your point, that like, how do I launch the book? How do I keep, getting this book in people's hands? What are the metrics I should be looking at? Book sales is not always the right metric to be looking at for a coach. Sometimes getting how many free books did I get into people's hands to expose them to my work might be a better metric. So understanding some of these things that you need to know for like really the business of being an author. I have an author community that is closed. So only people that have come through my program, come to my retreat, or worked with me one-to-one come into this space. And this is where we provide ongoing education around marketing, business strategy, finances, speaking. We really cover broadly the things that an author needs to not only know in the beginning, but also as they continue their author journey. Because you're right, this is writing the book it's honestly not even half of it. It's like you get the book done and now you have the process of publishing, and then you have marketing. If you can approach this strategically and seeing it as an investment in your business, investment in your brand and in you, and you have a really good attitude about it, I think this is really important. Like you come to it and you go, my marketing is serving people. My book is serving people. I am serving the world through showing up in my marketing. I think that really changes it a lot for people. And the people that I've seen who are the most successful, they start early. They start like the minute they start writing their book, basically, they're on LinkedIn. I just started a book. And it's so fun for me because I always, not always, but most of the time I get tagged in it. And I see all of the, wow, I'm so excited. Wow. And then, of course, you have this like not only people championing you and that hopefully will support you when the book comes out, but it's also that like motivation to keep going. It's some added accountability.
Yeah, it's interesting. So, I mean, of course, there's no particular time, but start to end, from ideation, doing the outline, you said it could even be a couple of months, the actual writing, the publishing, the promotion. Is this like a year-long process? Is that what you recommend, or is that enough time?
Recommend 18 months. When authors have a reason to do 12 months, and this is an important point I'll come back to in a second, you can do it in 12 months. But really a better time frame to plan around is about 18 months up to 24, depending on your life, how much time you can devote to writing the book. But 18 months is about average for the authors that I work with. I mentioned if you had to have a really good reason to write your book in 12 months. A lot of times what I find is authors come to me and they're like almost harried, like I have to get this book done and out by the end of the year. And it's like March. And I, sometimes, but very, very rarely, there's a good reason. For example, an event, they got picked as a keynote for this major event and they will buy 5,000 copies. Like that's a really good reason to hustle and get this book done. But for most people, actually what direct that is fear, I believe. It's fear that I haven't done it. So there's this, there's this voice inside that's like, okay, I said I want to write a book, but I haven't written a book. And now I'm ready. So now I better do it really fast so that I don't abandon it. And they're not necessarily like even aware of this. But if I do it really fast, if I just lean in and do it quickly, I'm going to get this book done and I'm not going to fail. So they would rather do sometimes, like, frankly, a worse job on the book to get the book done faster. And so when you work with me and any other coach who is going to push back as a coach should do when it's appropriate, I would really try to understand the why. If there's a solid why, wonderful. Let's work with that. There are times where I have an amazing person that I would love to work with, but their why doesn't make any sense. And I see the fear and scarcity coming into it. And I'm like, look, I don't think that I'm the right person to support you on this. If you feel that you can adjust your time frame, I would love to support you. And here's why I'm suggesting that we look at it in a different way. Because most of the time, I think the other fear that comes in is, oh, if I don't get it out soon, I'm going to miss out on the opportunity. But you can start marketing the minute you start writing. Just because it takes, let's say, 18, maybe 24 months to get that book into readers' hands fully launched, you have still, let's say, 18 months of growing your brand presence, of building your business as the book is being prepared and ready to go out in the world. So actually, it's a wonderful opportunity. And I'll also add one more like quick story. I had this really wonderful woman come through my program, and she used her beta reader process. So beta reader is when your book has been written, you've gone through whatever your editorial process is, like the initial stages of it. You haven't yet done like the cleanup editing, so copy editing and proofreading. And so there's this stage. This is another reason to have a little bit more time, because if you do it in a year, there's just no time for this most of the time. She picked her beta reader group, all potential clients. So these are all people that could be clients of hers. I don't remember the exact number that ended up hiring her, but it was like, I think it was at least two or three of this group. And so she was already growing her business, getting new clients before her book ever came out. And she used that book as part of her marketing and part of connecting with people that she wanted to work with.
I love that story. First, I love the story. I love that using a beta group, potential clients, and also your feeling out does this framework, is this really feeling right for me? The other thing that occurs to me is when you sign up to do your masters, you don't blink at the time frame that it's going to be. You
That's true.
know that it's going to be a couple of years to get it done, and maybe you need to write a thesis, maybe you don't, and all that. So you don't blink at the time. And so I'm always kind of curious, like, why, other than fear-based, do you feel like you need to complete your book and publish it and have it out in the world in a really short time, when if you were going to go and do something major like a second degree or third degree, you wouldn't blink. You would just go, "Oh, well, that's just the investment in the time. This is the level of commitment that's needed for that kind of project." Stacy, is there anything in particular that I haven't asked that you think is important to share with the listeners?
Mm. We've talked a lot about book writing, but we haven't yet talked about creative practice in general. And is that being integrated into your like lifestyle design and having this creative time in your day? One of the things that my clients will tell me like years later after they've gone through the process of writing their book is that a lot of the lifestyle design strategies that we work on when they are writing become the bedrock for their strategic thinking, their future writing, and their learning. Because when you write a book, you have to really rethink the way that you are living your mornings, and even living your night times, because those set up your next day. And some of the things that we have to do is like reduce the dependency on screens in the morning, keep that inbox shut, keep the news app and all of the things, the messages away, and really create this discretionary time in the morning and I say morning because while I know there's a lot of people that are going, no, 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 but I create best at night. Probably, but there's strong scientific research that shows that willpower decreases and is at its very lowest right before you go to sleep. So while you might be the most creative at night, your willpower is at its lowest, and you really need that willpower to be able to complete a big project like writing a book. And so I'm a night owl. Even as a toddler, I would stay up until midnight. And as a preteen and teen, I would, read until the early hours of the morning after my parents went to bed. But I've had to retool, relearn how to protect discretionary time in the morning before I do anything else. And so I'm actually working on a book right now around creative productivity. And I think on that note as well, a lot of the research that's been done on creative productivity, on writing, on flow, has been done on neurotypical humans. And so for me, I have an interest in understanding neurodiverse brains or neurodiverse people, understanding how their brains work, and understanding also how, sometimes the kind of consistent daily work, there are people, for example, on the autism spectrum that have amazing hyperfocus that can lean into that for their creative practice. So that's also an area that I think we don't talk about enough, but that's really interesting.
Stacy, I have so enjoyed our conversation. Now, before we wrap up, can you please share with the listeners how they can find out more about you and the work that you do?
Yes, thank you so much, Candy. I've loved our conversation as well. You can learn more about me at stacyennis.com. It's STACY, no E, and ENNIS.com. And I also have a free guide. It's called 10 Things You Must Know Before Writing Your Nonfiction Book. It's completely written by me, not any AI was used in the creation of this guide. And you can get that at stacyennis.com/10 things.
And I'll be sure to put the links in the episode notes so people can just click right through. Thanks so much for joining us, Stacy. And thank you, listeners. Now, here's what I want to leave you with. Before you click complete on this episode, think about what Stacy is talking about here. Now, maybe a book is in your future, maybe it's not, but there's so many gems that she's shared with us. Think about what you've learned. Choose one thing that you're going to take and implement over the next week. There's so much she shared that we can grow from. And Stacey, I really appreciate your message. And it was so interesting to learn about book writing, authoring, publishing, all of the things. And for me, the most interesting was the growth that somebody experiences as an author.
Thank you so much, Candy. I loved our conversation and I appreciate you just bringing out these topics and sharing it with your audience.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of She Coaches Coaches. If this conversation resonated, take a moment to reflect on what stood out and how it connects to where you are right now. Coaching businesses grow through clarity and thoughtful choices, not pressure or hustle. If you'd like more support, you can learn more at stepintosuccessnow.com. I'll put the link in the episode notes. And if you found this episode helpful, I'd appreciate it if you would share it with a peer or colleague who would enjoy it as well. I appreciate you being here. Have a great day.